The earth was ancient, long before humanity ever walked its soil. In that far-off time there were no cities, no voices, and no trace of mankind. The world was ruled by beings far older and stranger than any human imagination could conceive. Mountains rose fresh from the depths of the planet, oceans sprawled like endless mirrors, and forests of towering plants filled the air with a heavy, damp breath. It was a living world, but it belonged to other masters. In the steaming swamps and dense jungles of this forgotten age, colossal reptiles lumbered through the thick ferns. Their tails carved wide paths through the undergrowth, and their massive feet sank deep into the soft ground. The air trembled with the deep rumble of their calls. These creatures were not mindless beasts. They were rulers, bound by instinct, yet shaped by millions of years of survival. Their presence commanded the world in ways no human could yet imagine. One such giant, a long-necked creature with a body heavier than 100 men, raised its head above the canopy. Its enormous neck allowed it to strip leaves from the tops of trees where no other creature could reach. It moved slowly, deliberately, but its size alone made it untouchable to most predators. Behind it, others of its kind followed, their bodies swaying like living towers. Together, they reshaped the forest by their very presence. But not all rulers of this time were gentle. In the shadows of the tall plants lurked hunters with teeth as sharp as daggers, and eyes trained on every movement. They waited, calculating, and when opportunity struck, they exploded into motion with terrifying speed. Their prey was often smaller, weaker, and slower, but sometimes even the giants were not safe. Nature's rule was simple. Strength, cunning, and patience ensured survival. The earth's skies, too, were not empty. Above the forests and swamps, vast wings beat against the heavy air. Some of these flying rulers had wingspans longer than the height of a house. They soared with ease, riding the warm currents, searching for food in the waters below. Fish near the surface lived in constant danger, for these lords of the air could dive without warning, snatching them with long beaks before rising once again into the clouds. In the oceans, life thrived in forms equally strange and commanding. Massive creatures swam through the depths, their movements graceful yet filled with power. They ruled the seas with jaws lined in sharp teeth, capable of crushing bone in a single bite. Their eyes glowed in the filtered light, hunting constantly in a world where the strong devoured the weak. The earth in this age was not a peaceful place. It was beautiful, vibrant, and alive, but it was also filled with constant struggle. Each day, creatures rose to hunt, to feed, and to fight for survival. Each night the forests echoed with the sounds of calls, growls, and movements in the dark. The rulers of this age were not kings by choice. They were kings because nature demanded it. Among these creatures, balance existed. The plant-eaters shaped the forests, trimming the leaves and keeping the growth in check. The hunters controlled the numbers of the plant-eaters, ensuring the world did not overflow. Even the smallest creatures played a role, cleaning, breaking down, and recycling the remains of the dead. Life was bound together in an endless cycle, each creature powerful in its own way, yet the earth itself was restless. Deep beneath the ground, fire churned and mountains shifted. At times, the ground trembled, and rivers of molten rock tore across the land, reshaping valleys and plains. The skies darkened with ash, and the rulers of the earth were forced to flee, adapt, or perish. Nature gave, but it also destroyed, and no creature, no matter how mighty, could escape its power. Part 1 closes with the world in motion, forests alive with giants, skies ruled by winged lords, oceans filled with predators, and the ground itself shifting beneath them. This was a world long before mankind, a place where mysterious creatures truly ruled the earth. The forests of this ancient world stretched endlessly, their roots drinking from wide rivers that carved silver paths through the green. Mist clung to the treetops in the early light, and the songs of unseen creatures filled the air. This was not the silence of an untouched land, but the vibrant pulse of a living planet. Every sound, every movement, every breath of wind carried the weight of survival. Among the towering trees, herds of armored giants moved slowly, their bodies covered with thick plates of bone and horn. These creatures carried natural shields upon their backs, protection against the fierce predators that stalked the shadows. Their tails swung like heavy clubs, each strike capable of shattering bone. Though slow, their unity in numbers and their defenses made them formidable. Even the hungriest hunter thought twice before challenging them. Yet hunger drove risks. From the edge of the forest, a predator with eyes as sharp as the blades of its teeth studied the herd. It lowered its body into the ferns, every muscle tight with patience. Its breath came slow and quiet, hidden beneath the buzzing of insects. For hours it waited, watching the movements of the herd, searching for weakness. A young one strayed too far from the circle of protection. In that moment, the predator's muscles coiled, and it exploded forward with terrifying speed. The chase tore through the forest, breaking branches and shaking the ground. A reminder that in this age, survival was paid for with vigilance. Beyond the forests lay vast plains. The grasslands rolled like golden seas beneath the sun, and across them moved other rulers of this world. Long-necked giants, their forms like living towers, walked slowly across the open land. They traveled in groups, their footsteps leaving deep impressions that filled with water after the rains. Their necks stretched high, sweeping across the tops of trees for food. They were not alone, for wherever they went, smaller creatures followed, scavenging from the leaves they dropped and the ground they disturbed. To exist near such giants was to live in their shadow, benefiting from their presence, but always risking the dangers that stalked them. In the skies above, the rulers of the air continued their reign. Their wings beat against the currents, wide and powerful, casting shadows that swept over the plains below. Some soared effortlessly, traveling vast distances in search of fish or carrion. Others dove with piercing cries, their sharp beaks ready to strike. The presence of these aerial hunters forced smaller creatures to seek cover in the brush, for a single mistake meant death from above. Their cries echoed across the land, a haunting reminder that the skies themselves belonged to another order of kings. Farther still, the oceans stretched wide and endless. Waves rose and fell like breathing giants, and within their depths lived creatures unlike anything that walked the land. Long-bodied predators with teeth like knives glided silently beneath the surface. They moved with elegance, their tails propelling them swiftly through the water. Schools of smaller fish scattered before them, turning the sea into a shifting wall of silver. The rulers of the sea were merciless, for beneath the waves there was no refuge. Each hunt ended in blood, and each victory ensured survival in the endless struggle. The earth itself continued to test its rulers. Storms swept across the land, tearing trees from their roots and flooding the plains. Lightning split the skies with blinding force, and thunder rolled like the steps of giants. Fires spread across the forests, leaving behind black scars that smoldered for days. Yet life returned quickly, for even destruction was part of the endless cycle. The rulers adapted, moved, and endured, bound to the rhythm of a restless planet. At night, the world transformed again. The forests darkened, and strange voices rose from the shadows. Smaller predators with keen senses ruled these hours, slipping through the undergrowth with silent steps. Their eyes glowed in the moonlight, and their cries pierced the stillness. Insects filled the air with constant hums, while unseen creatures stirred in the branches. The darkness belonged to a different set of rulers, creatures whose power lay not in size but in stealth and speed. The cycle of survival did not rest when the sun vanished. It only shifted from one hand to another. Through all of this, balance remained. The great herds moved to feed, the hunters struck with precision, the scavengers waited for scraps, and the smallest creatures carried out their hidden tasks of keeping the world alive. No single ruler stood above all others, for power shifted with time, place, and circumstance. The earth was a stage, and each creature played its part in the grand performance of survival. Part 2 closes with the reminder that this was a living planet of constant struggle and adaptation. Giants walked the plains, winged hunters ruled the skies, armored beasts defended their herds, and the oceans concealed their own kings. It was a world of mystery and majesty long before the arrival of mankind, when the earth itself seemed to breathe through the creatures that ruled it. The age of rulers continued, but the world never stood still. With each passing generation, landscapes changed, climates shifted, and creatures adapted. Time was the greatest sculptor, reshaping both the land and the lives that depended on it. The giants of one era gave way to new forms, and the mysterious dance of survival unfolded in countless shapes across the earth. In a valley carved long ago by glaciers, a river wound its way through fertile plains. Here, herds of towering plant-eaters gathered. Their sheer size kept most predators at bay, but even they were not untouchable. Packs of cunning hunters stalked the fringes, working together in silence, waiting for a single mistake. These hunters were not the largest, but their strength lay in unity and strategy. They drove weaker members of the herd into traps where swift jaws and sharp claws sealed their fate. It was a dangerous game, but it brought rewards enough to feed the pack. Across the river, armored beasts wallowed in the mud, cooling their bodies in the midday sun. Their heavy shells gleamed with moisture, each plate like a shield forged by nature. They carried weapons on their tails, swinging them with force enough to break bones. They fed on low plants, pulling them from the ground with slow determination, their strength unmatched in defense. Around them, smaller scavengers lingered, watching for scraps or waiting for predators to test their luck and fail. The plains beyond the valley opened into endless horizons. Here, swift-footed grazers thrived. Their bodies were built for speed, their long legs carrying them across the land like waves of motion. They gathered in massive herds, the pounding of their hooves like thunder rolling across the earth. Predators tested them often, darting in with bursts of speed, but the unity of the herd and their ability to run in unison often spared them. Survival here belonged to the fastest and the most vigilant. In the air above, winged rulers continued their eternal watch. They glided over the plains, circling with patience, their eyes scanning the ground for weakness or opportunity. When a predator made a kill, the Sky Kings descended, their wings casting vast shadows. Sharp beaks and piercing cries claimed what they desired, often driving land predators away from their hard-earned meals. Dominance was not always about strength alone, but about presence and timing. The skies held their own hierarchy, a kingdom that demanded respect from all below. Farther west, the seas rolled endlessly against rocky shores. The waves struck with force, and the waters foamed white with energy. Beneath these waves, strange rulers moved. Some were massive, their bodies sleek and powerful, their jaws wide enough to swallow prey whole. Others darted quickly through the shallows, their fins cutting the water like blades. Coral reefs provided shelter for countless small creatures, but the reefs were also hunting grounds for larger predators. Every shadow in the water could mean death, and even the mightiest swimmer faced rivals that matched or exceeded its power. Volcanoes dotted the horizon, their peaks breathing smoke into the sky. The ground trembled often, reminding the rulers of the land that the earth itself was alive and restless. When the mountains rumbled, creatures fled. Rivers of molten rock poured down their slopes, consuming forests and reshaping plains. Ash filled the air, blocking the sun and chilling the land. In such times, survival depended not on strength or size, but on endurance and adaptability. Many perished, but those who endured carried the world forward. The nights grew colder in this shifting era. Frost touched the grasslands, and snow dusted the mountains. Creatures adapted, growing thicker coverings to endure the chill. Some migrated vast distances, following warmth and food. Others huddled together for safety, sharing heat and strength. The balance of power shifted again, for predators that once thrived in warm forests struggled in colder plains, while others found their opportunity in the new environment. The rule of the earth was never static. It was passed from one creature to another, depending on time, place, and necessity. Among the shifting landscapes, strange creatures appeared and vanished. Some grew horns and crests that rose high above their heads, signals to others of their kind. Some evolved into masters of speed, their bodies shaped by the endless chase. Others grew heavier armor, fortresses of bone and horn. Each adaptation told the story of survival, written not in words, but in flesh, bone, and instinct. These were the mysterious rulers of their age, kings and queens of niches that no other could claim. Part 3 closes as the earth transforms under fire, ice, and time. Predators hunt in unity. Herds thunder across plains. Armored giants defend their territory, and the skies and seas remain filled with their own masters. This was the endless march of ages, where no rule was permanent, and the only constant was change itself. Ages passed, and the earth continued to evolve. The mighty rulers of one era slowly gave way to new forms, each adapted to the shifting face of the planet. Forests rose and fell, oceans retreated and advanced, and the climate danced between warmth and cold. Life was endlessly patient, shaping itself to the rhythm of the earth's changes. The creatures that once seemed eternal were destined to fade, replaced by others more suited to the challenges of survival. In the vast wetlands, creatures with massive jaws and armored hides lurked in the shallows. Their eyes, just above the surface, watched with still patience. They were ambush hunters, rulers of silence, striking with explosive force when prey drew near. Fish, amphibians, and even the unwary giants of the land became victims of their sudden power. They reigned not through size alone, but through patience and precision. The waters, still and calm, belonged to them. On the plains, herds of giants continued their long marches. Their endless migrations carved paths across continents, their presence reshaping entire ecosystems. They fed the earth with their remains, nourished forests with the plants they trampled, and carried seeds in their journeys. They were not only rulers, but also builders of the world's balance. Wherever they roamed, life flourished in their wake. Predators remained, each generation more cunning than the last. Some grew larger, more fearsome, their jaws and claws designed to pierce even the strongest defenses. Others became smaller and quicker, able to dart in and strike before vanishing again. They filled every corner of the earth, claiming niches left behind by those who could no longer endure. Their roars echoed across valleys and mountains, reminders that fear itself was a form of power. The skies, too, changed. Winged rulers evolved new shapes, some shrinking into agile hunters of insects, others spreading wings wider than any before. They adapted to shifting winds, new prey, and new dangers. Their cries filled the air, and their shadows swept over forests and seas alike. No corner of the earth escaped their gaze, for the skies belonged to those who dared to master them. The oceans continued their timeless reign of power and mystery. Enormous predators still swam in the depths, their teeth sharp and their hunger endless. Yet new forms began to appear. Sleeker, faster, and more cunning, they learned to hunt in groups, overwhelming prey with unity rather than sheer strength. Reefs expanded, teeming with life, while vast schools of fish turned the seas into living rivers of silver. The rule of the oceans was shared by many, each adapted to their corner of the watery world. But as time pressed forward, the earth revealed its harsh truth. No rain lasted forever. Catastrophe came sudden and unstoppable. A blazing fireball from the heavens tore through the skies, striking with a force that shook the entire planet. The ground split, forests burned, and waves rose higher than mountains. Darkness covered the skies, and the air grew cold. For the rulers of this age, it was the end of their dominion. The giants that once thundered across the plains fell silent. The winged lords dropped from the skies, their shadows gone from the earth. The seas, though still alive, lost many of their greatest hunters. Ash choked the land, and cold gripped the world. It was a time of loss, a time when the mightiest creatures vanished forever into memory. Their bones sank into the ground, their shapes preserved in stone, whispers of their former glory. Yet life endured. From the ashes of destruction, smaller creatures emerged. They adapted quickly, seizing the empty spaces left behind. Where giants once ruled, new forms began to rise. Where predators once roared, silence gave way to new voices. The cycle of the earth continued, for its rhythm never ended. Each age built upon the last, and each set of rulers paved the way for those yet to come. The story of these mysterious creatures was not one of permanence, but of passage. They ruled their time with strength, grace, and power, shaping the earth in ways still visible in stone and soil. Though they vanished, their legacy remained in the balance of life they left behind. They were kings and queens of forgotten ages, guardians of a world before humanity, rulers whose reigns were written not in words, but in the very bones of the earth. Part 4 closes with the reminder that the earth is eternal in its cycles. Before mankind, rulers rose and fell, each shaping the world for the next. Their mystery endures not only in fossils and stones, but in the living world that still carries echoes of their presence. The age of giants may have ended, but their story remains eternal, etched forever in the earth itself.